Hello, Purse Strings for Financially Fearless Women. Happy Thursday. Today we have Brian Haney on, and he is going to give us some great information about different financial professionals and things they can help you with. So we'll wait for people to get on. We'd love everyone to just tune in and say hello and where you're coming from. And Brian, where are you?
So I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is essentially literally just across the border of Washington, D.C. And I am what they call a native Washingtonian. So I was born in Washington, D.C. And we are a bit of a rarity. There are a lot of people that are in D.C. that are not from D.C. So it's actually rare for someone to be from this area. So I'm very proud of that fact. And it's certainly an interesting part of the country, as I'm sure a lot of people can imagine, but it's home. It's always been home for me. So it's, we have a lot of fun here.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah, it must be always interesting being around there.
It is. You get to see, so much of what America, entails, because obviously government, all the others. So you kind of see such a broad landscape, and that's always excited me and fascinated me. Even in our practice, I've always kind of had a heart to I want to have a practice that kind of represents my community. And when Washington D.C. is kind of your community, it's really interesting because that means A, having a really diverse practice, B, and working with a lot of different types of industries, working with federal folks, working with transplant. I mean, it's just a lot of fun. So, one of my favorite things in life is listening to people's stories, and there are no shortages of stories in DC. Everybody's got an amazing story. So it's just, to me, all the time getting to meet new people and just hear some of the most fascinating stories around. It's just, I'm very, very, very fortunate. It's a privilege to be here. So
nice.
That's awesome.
And there's
Madison
so much
coming in today.
Hi, Madison. There's so much to do and see in DC as well. I mean, are you right in kind of around where all the monuments are and stuff? Or is it more of a neighborhood that's outside of that?
So we are in a very urban part. So and when I say literally on the border, like there's a street outside the condo that I live in that is the border between Maryland, which is where we are in DC. So I'll kind of describe it. So there's what they call the Beltway, which is the circle around the city of the major route that cuts across Maryland and Virginia, essentially, and there's a bunch of arteries that then kind of go into DC. So we are anything that's inside the Beltway. I think people in this area kind of consider that's like the urban zone because you're just a metro stop, as you will, or two away from getting into the city. So where we are is I can walk out of my condo to one of to the busiest metro station in the entire system.
Wow.
And just hop in, go right downtown, get to wherever I need to in DC. So that's really, again, as an urbanite, with wonderful public transportation, it's very accessible. But it's also, because we're not actually in DC, it's kind of like you have enough distance that you can appreciate some of the, other parts of the suburban life. And but yeah, it's great. There's just everything to do as you can imagine, from shows, Broadway, social, it's the whole 9 yards. So I love it.
Yeah. Sounds like a cool place to live. Yeah.
Chicago.
Hello, Chicago. That's my home. That's where I'm from. Got some Chicagoans in here. So
love it.
So it's great. Well, let me give a little intro to Brian, besides him coming from DC, Maryland, and then we can get started. So Brian is all about empowerment. It's not just education. It's not just advice. It's equipping you to win in your mind and in your heart. Sometimes what you do or not do, sometimes what you do or do not invest in matters as much as how well your investment performs. It's not just about risk, it's about personal values. So Brian helps optimize daily money management and work to improve improve your margin. He helps you prepare for the unexpected by developing an insurance and risk management strategy tailored just for you. He helps plan for major purchases and navigate those bigger ticket items in life by keeping the big picture in view and being strategic, as well as plan for future, developing a comprehensive strategy and investing strategy so you have enough money for all important things in your life. Most importantly, he helps you understand how emotions and personal values play a significant role in making the right decision. So with that, Brian, I'll hand it over to you.
Wow, thanks, Maggie. So that's definitely a mouthful. And so, yeah, I think I like to try to say, when I tell people what I do is it's pretty simple. I try to, and we as a practice, try to help you make the financial decisions that you want to make, because we all want to make our money work for ourselves. But there's oftentimes something or many things that stand in the way from us. If we step away and are honest and say, well, do we have our finances together? A lot of people say no, and for one or two or a variety of reasons. So our role is, I think it's really simple. Let's look at that very, very, very matter-of-factly and come alongside you to work through, creating kind of a strategy, if you will, of understanding what are the things that are standing in the way from moving forward, and then formalizing a plan to start to take the right steps. It's never a one-time thing. I think most people in the financial industry would agree with that, financial planning, financial advice, or financial strategies are never one and done. You need your money to work with you and evolve with you over time, because what happens in life? Well, life happens, so you need to have kind of, I think we consider it a collaborative partnership, right? Where we're working hand in hand with you to get you where you're trying to go. And I think I really appreciate the fact that Maggie shared about emotion. I tell people this, I graduated with a degree in journalism. So I'm actually, I'm probably wired to try to find really effective ways to communicate. But my minor was in psychology, because human behavior fascinates me. And so I think I probably spent as much time in the professional arena also understanding human behavior, behavioral economics, emotional intelligence, and all that for the purpose of making sure that when I'm working with so many people in so many different places and different walks of life, I have a better capacity to connect and understand what you're experiencing and how you feel about it. And that way, as a professional, we can really meet you where you are and help you move forward and move the needle. And so I think that is, really important. The things that stand in our way in general aren't always just money or monetary. Like sometimes maybe it's life experiences where, maybe our environment growing up was one of scarcity. Maybe we had, a parenting dynamic where, their fiscal responsibility was on full display and it wasn't very good. And, there are just so many things in life that can create a framework that we then are, operating out of, mostly subconsciously. Sometimes it becomes more conscious as, you kind of get out into the world and do life. And then it's, okay, well, if that has a major impact and influence, how do we make sure that we see that, address that, and still take the right steps forward? Because again, I think the difference between really financially successful people and those that are less successful is not how much money they make or how great of a return they get. It's how effective they are at taking what they have and allowing it to support really good lifestyle. So it's doing the most you can with the money that you have, not making more of it or having more of it. So hopefully that can be, a statement of encouragement, because, I say it time and again, I have so many examples of clients that I work with that aren't multi-millionaires, but I would consider them extremely financially successful because they've made the most of their money. They just they don't have to make the most money. They've made the most of their money. And so anybody, I think, can accomplish that. It's not about feeling like you have to be in a different stratosphere than other people are. So I think that's hopefully a good kind of starting ground and framework for us to talk through things. I know, we were talking about wanting to make sure that, what the heck is a financial planner? So maybe it would be good to get into, I'm going to walk through the financial concern areas, but what I want to do is I'd like to frame the industry, the financial industry, and make sure that everyone understands that there are a lot of different practitioners, if you will, because you may, depending on where you are and what your needs are, certain types of financial professionals might be more suited to connecting with than others. I guess we were talking a little bit about this before we went live, that I think sometimes there's this impression that a financial professional or financial advisor, financial planner is one type of person that, either charges you a fee or does this very, very kind of buttoned up thing, and you almost have to be in a certain wealth situation, have a certain amount of money or whatever, that it's a very, kind of regimented, strict thing. And, that's the only type of person that you really should aspire to work with. Well, there are people and practitioners in this industry that have, very, very narrowly defined practices in what they do and who they work with, but they are not the only ones out there. And frankly, it's a wonderfully diverse industry. So I'd like to kind of start to walk through what I call the 4 financial concern areas. So this is really a framework for how do you see all of the puzzle pieces in your financial world, and also point to some parties that can help you depending on, where some of those needs might pop up. Because maybe it might be a financial advisor, financial professional, but maybe it might be somebody else. And so I think that maybe that would be, a helpful process. So Maggie's going to help me kind of walk through some of these. So the first one, okay. Man, I should have made that a little bit easier to see. But so the concern area number 1, as I like to call it, is daily money management. And, this is really, I call it cash flow. In fact, anybody that's ever played the game Cash Flow, it's a great fun game that highlights what we're talking about here. But I think that this is probably that foundational piece that, by the way, everyone deals with, and it never ends, right? The key to financial success is mastering margin, right? Taking a lot in, saving some of it, spending some of it, and making sure that you're in a positive scenario, not trying to avoid living paycheck to paycheck or being upside down or all that kind of negative terminology, but seeing this. And I think making strategic decisions about it. When I talk to people about, their budget, or I ask kind of basic questions, well, do you have a budget, or what's your budget look like and how it works? Sometimes that can be scary, or something that there's shame about, or, challenges on, because, sometimes we kind of get into a flow, but maybe we haven't really put enough together where we would say, yeah, I have a budget, I know what it is, and I'm actually kind of using it, right? My budget, I'm making these decisions rather than just kind of reconciling on a month-over-month basis how I spent things. So, just in this area, if you recognize maybe for yourself that you could improve, maybe this isn't the biggest thing for you, but it's something that you would like to do better with. And I think, frankly, that's something that a lot of people, regardless of affluence or income, can probably say throughout their life, then there are certain professionals that can be really, really helpful. And I think the first part of the industry, and this is a newer, I would say, part of the broad financial industry, in that I think it's grown tremendously over the last probably decade, but it probably wasn't a practice that existed that much beyond maybe in the last 10, 15 years. And that's a financial coach. So what's a financial coach? It kind of is what it sounds like. It's almost like a personal trainer for your money, right? So that financial coaches are really good at helping with things such as budgeting, debt reduction, really kind of getting you in a really good financial place and helping you put some very basic blocks together. That's kind of literally what they live and die doing. And they are tremendously helpful and effective at doing that. So, most people have never even heard of financial coaches. So hopefully maybe I'm introducing this to some folks, which is great. It's a growing part of the industry. There's financial coaches popping up all over the place. There's some really great professionals out there that can help you. So that might be someone that you could work with. Certainly financial advisors or someone in my shoes can help as well with this. Some are better at focusing on budget than others might be. And that's maybe a question if you're working with one or you're approaching one that you want to ask, what do they do? How do they help you work with this type of a situation? Or, what kind of skill set do they have? What kind of tools do they use to help make sure that you're optimizing your cash flow? And one that probably you might not think of, but are as I started in the profession, this is what I was. I was a licensed banker. And that is a banker. There are people that work at banks and help you set up your checking account and all that other stuff that can be great professionals and great resources that might be able to help you with this as well. So, it might not always just be a financial advisor. And, you want to be able to know that you can potentially work with one or a couple of different parties throughout the course of, your life and to satisfy your financial needs. Let's move into the next area.
I'm just going to jump in here with you, Brian.
Yeah, please do. I don't want to talk for 45 minutes and have half of you go to sleep, especially my people in Madison. I got some really great friends out there, and I want you to stay with me. All right, cheeseheads, come on. So,
we actually have had a financial coach come on here once, because she's a purse strings approved professional. But it's a lot about investing in yourself too, and sometimes people think, well, I have very, very little money that I'm barely putting together. Like, I'm not going to spend money on a financial coach or a financial advisor, but it's really that investment in yourself that it might be a little bit more upfront, but in the long run, it can really pay off and really help those decisions.
No, Maggie, I'm so glad that you framed it that way, because I think you're absolutely right. And as another aside, in a past life, I was also a personal trainer. I did that for a while because I'm just a fitness enthusiast in general. And it's kind of the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. Why would you pay somebody to do something that maybe you could try to do on your own? And I would say this is a generality that I think can be relatively universally applied to a lot of these things. Is that what any kind of professional coach should do is kind of help you with discipline. Discipline is not a natural thing for all of us. And in fact, for some of us, if we're really, really honest, it's really challenging.
Yes.
And having a coach that just gives you a necessary framework and holds you accountable can actually be the thing that catapults you into success, because sometimes it's, there are reasons why we tend to put things off, or we don't like doing certain things or certain activities or creating certain habits that we know we'd like to have, but we just don't have yet, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a big part of that. And I think the other thing is you do very often need and want a professional's advice and framework so that you can see your own situation differently. And I think see it the right way, not just to take action, but to have encouragement to know that you can move the needle. Mm-hmm. You need encouragement. Coaches, advisors, the professionals should give you hope, should point you forward and say, you know what, you can do this. If you're telling me that this is your goal and you want to be here in 6 months or 6 years, like we can get you there. Let's create a framework and a strategy, and I'll, show you all the steps along the way to make that happen. And I think that that's, also equally important when it comes to, what are you doing? Who are you working with? It's that person walking alongside you to say, yep, we're going to get there, cheerleader, confidant, all of that. So it's so critically important.
Even other people are jumping in saying that, professionals at the top of the game have coaches, which is true. I mean, we always need to self-improve and things like that. So really, it's about investing in yourself, whether that's working out or doing your own finances or different things like that. I mean, we all know it's, earn more and spend less, but sometimes it's a little bit deeper than that.
Yeah, no, you will not hear a story of a person at the top of whatever category that they're at that will tell you, I just figured it all out. I've never heard that story. I'm sorry. Nope. I know I haven't lived forever, but literally, and I've had the privilege of knowing some super successful people, and every person I know that I would consider successful says they not only had one, they more often than I had an entire team of coaches and professional and people that helped them along the way and continue to do so. So yeah, I mean, coachability is huge.
All right, I'm going to let you keep going then.
Yeah, no, all right, let's see. I can't remember which order I put these in. So if we go to the next slide, okay, yeah, all right, here we go. So this is another area, right? So this is kind of building block number 2, planned major purchases. And I think the word that stands out the most in this type of area is the word planned, because one thing I can safely say that I see, again, across the landscape of financial experiences is that a lot of major purchases aren't planned. We kind of come about them based on need or want or what have you, but we're not always as methodical as we'd like to think that we are when it comes to these types of things. And then the concept of a major purchase also, I want to kind of stretch that a little bit, because it's not just, hey, I got a house or a vacation home or all that. It's not necessarily the size of the ticket, if you will, right? The amount that's being spent. I think it's really the impact that unplanned expenses can have on your lifestyle and all your budget and it can kind of, frankly, on the plans that you're putting in place. So I guess I'd say not planning major purchases can have a more detrimental impact on your financial well-being than you might realize. Whereas having a plan and being able to really effectively buy things of somewhat consequence or significant consequence, the percentage of improvement that we see literally statistically on how better off people are just because they took the time to think through it and maybe work with a professional in certain areas to make a better, more fiscally responsible decision. The impact is hugely significant, anywhere between 15 to 38% more money over their lifetime, just because they made a more strategic decision, not because they spent less. I've seen people spend the same amount and just do it the wrong way. So hopefully just that point and that truth can speak to you on some level. And so, major purchases, we understand real estate, homes, cars, vacations, and frankly, anything that you might throw on a credit card that's a big purchase. Some people, major purchases can be, a microwave. I mean, the term of it can vary, but I think it's really one of these scenarios where, again, these happen all the time. More often than not, they're not as thoughtful. So I say in this area, we just try to say, let's try to be as strategic and thoughtful as we can. And let's also make sure that when it comes to buying decisions, that we have a strategy and that we're also accounting for the unexpected, right? So something as simple as making sure that you have a bit of a cash cushion or savings reserves, or, that you really emphasize the need to, not have to go into debt if something unexpected happens to you, because a lot of times we all understand that can be really, really damaging and nobody wants to be in that situation. So preparing yourself to not be in that situation is really important. And then understanding loans. I mean, just how loans work and understanding, the best way to build a loan to fit your situation, why you would do one versus another. It's not just about interest rate. That's another thing. And so, in this arena, what are the parties that you can and or should be working with? Again, financial coaches, financial advisors, you'll see bankers, certainly mortgage professionals when it comes to real estate purchasing decisions. And I want to qualify that. There's a lot of people that can give you a loan. A lot of people can do that. And frankly, if you watch commercials, you can just push button, get mortgage, right? Okay. Now, is that the best way to go about that? I don't know. To me, when it comes to potentially borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would rather have somebody walk me through that so that way I really look at it and understand what it is. And so I tend to try to encourage people to work with somebody that's like a mortgage broker, somebody that can represent multiple institutions because they still exist and they're really good, but also somebody that will advise you on the loan process itself, not just get you a loan, because I've found that makes a huge difference. And so it may not always be that way, and you may not always feel like you want to work with that type of a person, but I cannot understate how important that is. Our practice has some really key partnerships with professionals like that we work with constantly. We refer people to constantly just because we know they're still going to get the loan, but what they get with the loan is the advice about how to get it the best way possible. And that's it's such a different experience. So hopefully that part helps. And again, trying to be more strategic, just plan for some of these things. And you'll find that, your enjoyment factor for what you end up getting doesn't go down, but your emotional enjoyment, knowing that you are more strategic about it and that it improved your financial situation and didn't hurt it, man, bringing those two things together are really awesome. So it's another thing. All right, let's see. What's the next one? Forget the order. There's only 4, so that's the good news is we're moving along. All right. So planning for the future. I think that this area is kind of a big catch-all. And I say it's anything that you want to save money for. What do we save for? We save for retirement. We save for college. Maybe we save for some kind of a trip or vacation. A lot of this is really, I think, what I find we talk about with most of our clients is we talk about seasons of life. I think that's a better framework for thinking about this. We don't always necessarily think of life that way, but when we our kids go off to college, that's a season of life. Or, we decide that we're going to, take a year or two off or, do some traveling or what have you. Like, we kind of go through seasons. And so I think that I find that type of a framework is really, really helpful, because what you're really doing when you're planning for the future is you're aligning savings and investing goals with some very concrete objectives in terms of what you want to do, what you want to spend, and most importantly, who you want to be doing whatever that is with. And that's really critical, right? The human relationship element is huge. And so, I think that this is probably the most fun, because there's a big part of me, I'm pretty artistic, and more importantly, my wife and daughter are super artistic as well. So we've got a very artistic bent in our household, so it's a lot of fun. And this is where I think it's really cool to tap into part of your creative psyche and do some, vision planning, really think about things and, kind of mentally prepare for whatever it is that is the objective here, because you want it to be as tangible as possible in your mind, because the more tangible it is, you're statistically more likely to achieve it if it's something that becomes more real in your mind. If it's really intangible or impersonal, and the big word that I joke all the time that is so intangible is that word retirement. If you're under the age of 40 and I say the word retirement to you, I could say, hey, you want to go to the moon tomorrow? And it has about the same level of relevance, because what is retirement? What are we talking about here? Like, it's just so nebulous of a concept. But if I say, hey, at some point in your life, do you want to work less or do you want to stop working? Yeah. Okay. Well, what could that look? What might you want to do? What do you think your life should look like, or what would you like it to look like in that stage? Who do you want to be with? What are the kind of things that you would get excited about, enjoying at that point? And then, we start to see things a little bit more clearly, and it doesn't become this thing that could be 30 or 40 years off. It still may be, but, now it's something that I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? I really like doing this, or, I've always wanted to have time to do more hobbies, or to start a side hustle in an area that I'm passionate about that I probably don't have time now. Right. So planning for the future, the best thing you can do is again, think of the life season, and answer the question. So this is probably, where the financial professional you're working with is really going to help you. So once we think about this, then we got to concretely answer the question, what's the money for? And this is an area where most people struggle with sometimes. We're putting money aside. I know I need to save, and I've got this big, bucket of money that I'm building up. Well, what's it going to be for? Well, this is my retirement money. Well, what does that mean? Okay, retirement. How are we defining that? Or college money or whatever. That's where, when we really get into creating more concreteness to it, that helps then kind of assign and align the things that you should be considering in terms of what are you saving into, how are you investing, what kind of risk do you want to be taking, et cetera. So once you answer that question really definitively, and you also have a good mental concept for it, it's so much easier then when you're working with a financial professional to know, okay, well, this is what I should invest in and why, because we've really figured it all out. And these are the things that kind of would support this optimally. In this area, there's a lot of other components to, I think, planning for the future, because depending on how far ahead you're planning and what all is involved, there might be elements of like estate planning and all that. Now I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but a lot of times, like I said, it's the relational component. So you're thinking about living with spouse, kids, what have you, friend, whatever that looks like. And so really making sure that we're accounting for all the parties involved is key as well. And the people that work, to work with in this area are financial advisors, wealth planners, and financial planners. And let me talk a little bit about the different types of practitioners. So the word financial advisor is it's kind of a catch-all that I think people lump a lot of different things together in, but there's kind of main differences that you might see in the types of advisor practices that exist. So I'll try to describe them. I'm not going to describe all of them, and I'm going to be speaking in generalities, but hopefully at least gives a little bit more of a framework for the industry. So some advisors are what are called fee only, and that's kind of self-descript, right? They are a professional that will charge you a fee for the services that they will render to you, and they give you a framework. So the thing about working with those types of practitioners is that you know what you're getting and you know what you're paying for it. And that's really helpful. In that type of a practice model, you want to not just obviously understand, how they work, what they do, how they cost, all that kind of stuff. You also want to know the component to execution, because if they're going to give you a plan and help you kind of walk through it and all that, you want to know then, how do you go about executing certain recommendations that they make? Will they do that in their practice? Do they have other people that they work with that do that for you? Do they expect you to do that? That part is just important to know. And it can be a different answer for each practitioner. Great practice model. Again, really, a lot of, it's easy because you know what you're getting, you know what you're paying for. But the execution piece is also sometimes where people get a little confused, and they just want to make sure that there's clarity there. Then there are what I would say those that do wrap accounts, but they're more asset management and wealth management type of practitioners. So they may not charge you a fee, but probably what they're trying to do is really help you grow and build your wealth. And they specialize in things like, portfolio design and, really helping deploy the assets the right way. And they'll, usually both types of practitioners tend to take a comprehensive approach. But those in the asset management space really do focus on that as kind of a foundational element of that practice. So that might be a place where, instead of them charging you a fee that's, dollars and cents, they might have a fee associated with managing assets as well. And so just seeing that that's a different way of them getting paid and all that. And then there are some that are what I would call hybrids, where they can do both. And in fact, our practice is a hybrid practice where we have the ability to kind of really tailor it. We can be fee only, we can manage assets, we can, do a little of both if it makes sense. And there are a lot of practitioners out there that are hybrid that, are very helpful as well, because, you might gravitate towards one type or the other. And it's nice to be able to know that you can have some choice and tailor things in terms of, who you work with, how you work with. And there are also, I'd say, a fourth that are kind of not just asset management, but also asset management and insurance professional based as well. Because a lot of times I see in the financial space, people that are fee only or planners or even wealth managers, a lot of times, and they will admit to you, hopefully tell you how comfortable they are in making recommendations and insurance recommendations, but whether or not they help you execute that or not is different. So there are times where there are certain practitioners that can do the asset management and also do a lot of the insurance planning and advice and execution as well. And that's really important. So I know I took a lot of time on that, but I think it's really important to know that there's diversity in practitioners, and what you really should look for is a fit. Don't feel like you have to go to one model versus another. Find one that works for you. Frankly, find the right provider, the right practitioner that you feel understands your needs, can connect with you in a manner that's helpful to you, and whatever kind of, however they get compensated, you're comfortable with that because you understand it and that's okay for you. I would tell you that we don't compete. I really don't think that certainly there's a competitive landscape, but how my practice works versus other people that do it differently, I don't consider that competition. I think it's just about, okay, well, we're a really good fit for certain people and we're not a good fit for others, and that's okay. Because that's kind of what I think people should be looking for. And so, hopefully taking a little bit of time on that helps, explain some of the things because there's so much confusion about it.
Hey, Brian, I want to jump in. Can you hear me?
I sure can. And I'm glad you can. I feel like I've been talking forever. So somebody else is a welcome voice.
Well, I love what you've said about planning for the future. If there's not one word I want every woman to know, it's about plan, making a plan. As they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So, and I was telling you this earlier, the number one regret that women have is that they didn't start investing or making a plan earlier in their lifetime, because they've missed out on, you can't make up that time with investing. They've missed out on that time that they had to invest. And, it's difficult sometimes when you feel like, oh, I don't have a lot of money to invest. It's really about reevaluating and making a plan for your money, for the tool called money, and making sure every paycheck or every time you have some income or you get something like your $1,400 check from the government, how much of that can you just set aside and start investing? So I do want to mention the number one thing is planning. People think, well, I'll start that when I make a little more money, but that might never come. That little more money might already have us be spent on a larger apartment or a new pair of shoes or whatever it might be. So I can't emphasize enough the word plan. And then the financial future component, I know we talked about Tom Hegna, and something he talks about are the go-go years and the no-go years. So when you're looking at retirement, the go-go years are when you first retire and you're like so glad you don't have to go to work every day and you're ready to travel and get out and play tennis and go to the country club and golf and do all those things where you go, 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 go. But then the no-go years are where you start to slow down and you think, I don't really want to play tennis today. Or, I'd rather just take an afternoon snooze or something like that. You start slowing down, right? And so you need to plan for those years, which is a different way of planning. So retirement is a long time and it encompasses a lot of different activities. So again, planning for your retirement is not just retirement, but retirement in itself needs a plan.
I couldn't have said it better. And that's why I find it's fun to think about what that should look like, right? Because you were just talking about it, right? What do you want to do with your life in that season? Forget money for a second. Just forget it. What do you want that season to look like? What are the things that really excite you? Have you been putting things off that you really want to then take advantage of? And make it as concrete as possible. Another thing that I find is really important, we keep talking about mentality and psychology. One thing that, again, a lot of studies just show this, as well as from my professional experience, that one of the hardest things is actually creating a model, what I call a model work week, but it's a model retirement week. We don't realize how used to life we are when it's done for us because we're going to work, right? We have a 9 to 5. And when you don't have that anymore, you don't realize, oh my gosh, I'm used to waking up a certain way, doing certain things, talking to certain people, going to lunch, like all of this stuff that is connected to work. When that changes, some people are better able to adapt and adjust than others. And actually just literally stepping away. This is an exercise that I do with all my clients when it comes to thinking about retirement, especially those that are on the doorstep, right? Because if I talk to a 30-year-old about thinking of your model retirement week, they're like, I don't know, right? So, but, really thinking about that, what do I want to do on a Monday, on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, and then, being able to kind of, you may not have all of the answers, but you'll start to have a better way to think about it and strategize and plan. And then when you step into it, because you're more prepared, it plays out in a much more meaningful way versus people that don't think about it at all. And it kind of feels like they fell off a cliff. All of their meaning has shifted. They were supposed to be excited about it, but now they're missing all this stuff. They don't really know why, and they don't have a rhythm anymore. And it kind of doesn't feel good. And yet we almost feel bad about not feeling good because we're retired and it's supposed to be a big party. So that's another thing, right? You really do need to think about this lifestyle component, and the money part follows suit. But if you don't kind of know what the money's supposed to do for you, it may not feel as good as it should.
I also wanted to jump in here and kind of talk about, when you said like, let's go to the moon, that's how I feel about retirement as well. Like,
yes.
It seems so far out, and, I have to plan for it, but it seems so far away. And so hearing about those seasons, it's like, well, this also gives me the ability to plan that I want to be able to go on certain vacations when I am, every year I want to do X, Y, Z or something like that. It gives the opportunity to like, not just wait until I'm retired when I start young, but just plan my life of how I want it to live. And it's not all about, you work to retire and then you can enjoy your life, but it's like enjoying your life while living it. And what does that entail for you? Do you want to take that time off to vacation, or do you want to be able to take some time to do your hobbies, not just when you retire, but while you're still young, which is something that's so fun to hear and like exciting, that I'm working for this money that just makes life so fun and giddy about, and I can go travel the world and eat all the food. Like, that's what I love,
Well, and Maggie, what you just shared, I think is really the best type of relational dynamic that I would want a financial professional to have, right? Mm-hmm. It's lifestyle, and it's seasonal, and mm-hmm. It's not the same for everybody. I think what hurts, and this, it's not I can't point to X, Y, or Z that says this is why it's this way, but we have kind of some of these generalities in our culture that says life's supposed to go a certain way. They're keeping up with the Joneses, right? And here's how the Joneses did it. and it's subtle. Sometimes it's less subtle, but it's kind of like we're supposed to do life this way. Well, why? Hold on a second. Time out. Let's just try to break out of that mold, and not think of, retirement as this kind of destination that happens at 65 because Social Security tells me that. Forget about all that. Let's really think about the life seasons that we're in and make sure that we optimize our money for that. But at the same time, have some forethought about, after this season's over, this is what I want the next season to look like. And so we're accounting for all of these things in the present. So that way you don't sacrifice the present for the future, or vice versa. Because there are times when I can say, I think people do themselves a disservice where they focus on the future too much, almost out of fear, and they really cost themselves certain things that they would otherwise want to enjoy now in the present. So there's a balance. You can't just go all in for 65 now that I'm 30 and I don't get to do all this other stuff because I'm just trying to make sure I'm good at 65. Like, okay, let's live along the way. And so I really think, again, I use the word season. That might be a different word for you or other people, but really seeing your lifestyle in terms of where you are and being good about saying, these are things that are important to me. And if it's really important, let's plan for it. Let's not feel like I have to make all these sacrifices, but let's have a plan so I can do these things, but also still feel like I can do other things as well.
Definitely. All right. I'm going to let you get to your last slide here, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah. Thank you. Both of you have been great at making sure that I don't just because hopefully you all can tell I love this stuff. I love talking about this. So planning for the unexpected. All right. This is where I get to kind of land the plane and say, life is risky. And there's just, we've been on the planet for more than a minute. This is my Captain Obvious moment, right? Okay. Things just don't always play out the way we hope, want, expect, etc. So any plan that you're putting together with whatever type of financial professional, prepare for the worst, plan for the best, but make sure that you have a risk-adjusted approach, right? And what that means really is there are, things that can happen that can derail all of the best intentions and the best plans. And if we don't acknowledge that those exist and also then account for them in some fashion, those are the things that can blow the entire thing up. And no, this isn't just a conversation about insurance, because most people are like, well, okay, that's insurance. Okay. Yes. But before we even get to the financial thing, what are the things that we should be thinking about? Right. And I don't want to get to the money part yet. It's, if I tell you, this is what I want my life to look like, this is what I like doing now, this is who I like doing it with, this is how I'd like to see it go, as if it was like a movie, right? And we're gonna play the movie, but right now we're just giving you the trailer, the highlights of what I want it to be like. Then I need to think about, what are the what ifs that could cause that entire thing not to work out, right? Obviously, we understand if we all get off this Facebook Live event and we go out the door and the bus hits us and that's it, it's a wrap. That's a scenario. We can't pretend that we're superhuman if something happens to us. Now, maybe for some that's more significant than us. For me, with a wife and a daughter, that's really important to me. And that type of a risk is something that it has a high priority and value to me in terms of making sure that I deal with it. Now, that may not be where other people are in their life risk, or maybe you're not married, you don't have kids. Maybe if something happens to you and you don't make it home, that stinks, but maybe there's not as much of a significant consequence. So that's okay, right? Not we don't all have to have the same value on these things, but we still need to think about them. The same bus that hits us doesn't kill us, but we never get to live life the same way again. That's the Christopher Reeve story for those of us that remember the old school Superman. And no, I'm not that old, but yes, I do know his story. And, he's kind of that poster child for, oh my gosh, something totally crazy happens. And now all of a sudden my life is turned upside down. I'm disabled. I can't do X, Y, and Z. I don't like using these words disability. I want you to think of things that are real, life experiences that just could happen, so we want to think about these things, prepare for them. Once we then create that scenario of, okay, well, if this happened, then what do we want to do about it? And that's where now the financial conversation comes into play. Do I want, if I don't like this risk and I want to do something about it, how can I do something about it? Is there an insurance mechanism that could protect me from this? And if so, how would I go about resolving that? Do I take some of that financial responsibility on myself? Maybe insurance isn't the total answer for this, but maybe it can be some of it, right? It can change, but you really want to be able to see it and then make that kind of strategic call for yourself. And obviously also, I think that a big area of this, especially when it comes to the people in my life, is that, for me, my plan that if I don't make it home is that I want my wife and daughter to live the life that I would have worked hard to give them, but now I'm not around to give them anymore. So that's literally when I tell my financial professional, that's what I'm planning towards. That's what it means to me. You want to be real concrete on what that means to you, because then what I put in place to substantiate that matters. Because if I really say that that's true for me, and this is where I think this is a values conversation as much as anything else. If I really say I value this, I value these people, I value these relationships, and I value making sure things happen a certain way for them, then that really should guide you in what you do from a planning standpoint, an insurance standpoint, all that kind of stuff. So insurance is a lot of times it's a dirty word, it's a pejorative, it's what we don't want to think about. And I get that, nobody should have to spend all this time going through all these what ifs, getting stressed out, anxious, et cetera. But we also can't avoid thinking about it. And we certainly don't want an incomplete plan. And what is an incomplete plan? It's a plan that just deals with savings, investing, and doesn't protect ourselves from these types of risks. Because I can tell you in 16 plus years of doing this, I have seen things that I never would have thought could happen play out. And I've seen parties that didn't really account for it. And the consequences were way more significant than anybody in that situation would have wanted. And so when we have the time and the capacity to have a real honest conversation, that's what we want to make sure we do. And so again, you can see obviously financial advisors, wealth planners, financial planners, but I think you also really need to work with somebody that is an insurance, I call an insurance advisor, but really an insurance broker, somebody that understands insurance, represents a bunch of different companies so that they can give you a competitive landscape, but can also tell you how to design policies to your situation. Because one thing that I really don't like about the insurance industry, especially how it's advertised, is it's becoming this commoditized race to the bottom that cheap is what we're going for, right? 15% or more, right? We're all paying too much for insurance, but we just click here and we'll pay less for the same stuff. Or worse yet, we only need to pay for what we need. Well, what if we don't know what we need, right? Insurance is not that way. And again, your insurance matters at the time of claim the most. And so, just work with somebody. And again, certain financial advisors and practitioners may not specialize this, and they tell you, but then they also usually will partner with or try to bring the right party to the table when it comes to executing that can help you really do this strategically, because it is important. It is not a one size shoe fits all. And you do want to have, it's kind of like it's a custom tailored suit or dress. We can't all walk into the store and pull a dress or a suit off the rack and think it's going to fit well. So be really mindful of this, take time with it. And then, make sure that whatever, you need to do to navigate risks, that you do it. And then once you know that you've done it, you can move on, and that your plan is as bulletproof as it possibly can be. Because I can tell you, we always think about the things that we enjoy, and we don't want to think about these things. And if we don't account for them, that's just not a risk I want anybody to have to go through. Because, and again, I'm not going to keep us on talking about personal stories. I got plenty of them. But make sure that we button all of this up, right? Daily money management, plan those major purchases. Don't just do them. Let them, have a strategy, plan for the future, build it around seasons, around people, around what you want, but have balance. and then don't avoid the things that could blow a hole in it because it's hard to think about, or you don't want to think about these things because they are important. And there you go. I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. So I know I covered a lot of ground. We talked about a lot of stuff, and hopefully also talking about the various types of financial people out there that can helps somebody, because it may not always just be a financial advisor that you need in this particular moment or for some particular thing. I'll say the last thing that I like to say is a good, what I like to, I'll speak about us in our practice. We like to be a good kind of general practitioner to our clients. And I'm using a medical analogy, right? Like your primary care doctor. Your primary care doctor will not perform brain surgery, or at least probably shouldn't, right? You come to that doctor because they kind of know you, they form a relationship with you, they understand your health dynamic. But then if you have a particular issue, that's the sport analogy I was trying to avoid. They are the liaison to getting you to that specialist that'll take care of that particular issue, right? So you really do want some financial professional that can kind of be that for you. They may not be able to do everything. They may not execute everything, but they should be able to at least kind of be that face of things and then help, bring other parties, or if you have other people you work with, coordinate things so that way you have a uniform experience. That's my last thing. So.
Awesome. That was really great. And that's why sometimes at Purse Strings we say, you need your financial team. It's not just one or two people. You need your whole team to work together.
100%.
But before we run out of time, we do have a question from one of our attendees.
Yes.
Asking, how much does it cost to work with a financial planner? And I know that number is going to say from anywhere, but can we get a ballpark or something that would help you get, just before you get started?
Yeah. So, that's why, so thank you, whoever asked that question, thank you for asking it. I think that's a really good one, and one that probably more of us think about, but don't always vocalize. The cost, it depends. I think when a lot of times we think of that, and I'm not suggesting this is where you're coming from or how you're asking this question, but I think a lot of times people think of, this person's going to charge me a certain set dollar amount. And that might be the case. And, a lot of fee only or fee planners will have usually an annual cost, like $2,500, or some can be as low as, I don't know, 1,000 to as high as 10. I mean, it can be a pretty broad range. Others, like I mentioned, depending on what type of practice, might engage you and say, well, since I run an asset management practice, my fees and the way that I will make money won't come by me giving you a bill, but, we'll have some kind of an asset management agreement that will, there'll be a percentage that will be charged on that asset management agreement. And that's how they will be compensated. And sometimes maybe that becomes more appealing because, again, it's still transparent. You know what you're getting, you know what you're paying for, but maybe you don't have to then have this kind of out-of-pocket bill that you have to account for.
And Brian, would you say that percentage is around 1% of your investment?
I think they say the industry average is about 1 to 1.5.
Yeah.
And again, these are industry averages. So, I can say finding somebody cheaper doesn't always mean that that's better. And also, if somebody's higher, that also doesn't mean that they're worse. You just kind of want to understand, you want to know what it is, you want to know what you're getting, you want to know what you're paying for it. And that's really, again, it's all about a personal fit. If somebody's charging you $10,000 and maybe even you can afford it, but what are you getting for that $10,000? Or what are you getting for that $1,000 or that 1% or that 2%, whatever it is. It just be comfortable and understand it. And, I think every professional deserves to get paid. Right. And so I think, even insurance professionals or whatever it is, right, whoever you're working with, just have that conversation and they'll, the good ones will be very transparent and honest and say, this is how it works, and, decide for yourself what makes sense. But I guess don't let the payment and the how they get paid be the tail that wags the proverbial dog. Find a fit. Or you need to answer the question, do I feel like I can know, like, and trust this person, understand what they're going to do for me, and it's going to work based on my needs, my personality. They really understand me. If you don't feel the person you're talking to understands you, it doesn't matter how much you pay them or how they get paid. It's not going to work out long term. So get that connection point first and then work out the compensation after the fact. Don't do it the other way around, because I think, we kind of, that's always this big thing that the industry's done a bad job of kind of putting it out there and almost making it seem like certain people get paid a certain way makes them worse or better. It doesn't at all. People can get paid different ways based on how they set up their practice. That's not right or wrong, good or bad. It's just different. So, get that connection that really fits for you. And hopefully also the compensation model will also fit as well.
Brian, you have given us so much information today, and we really appreciate that. We love having you as a purse strings approved provider. So people can always reach out to Brian at the Haney Company. His email is bhaney@thehaneycompany.com. He's also one of our purse strings providers, so he has his own webpage on pursestrings.co. So we hope to see everyone here again next week at noon Central. And we thank you again, Brian. This was fantastic.
Thank you. Love it. You guys are great. I really appreciate it.
All right. Talk to everyone soon. Bye.
Bye.